G'day guys, I've just returned from the Australian ITC Championships where I took home Best in Faction for Chaos Space Marines. So what I wanted to do was release a 9-part series where I'm going to break down the list that I ran to this event to achieve these results with the new changes that are forced upon the Chaos Space Marine players by Arcs of Omen. I'm going to talk about what changes I made to the list to match this new season and how I went about it, what the list was designed to do, those sorts of things. Then I'm going to do a separate installment for each game that we played in this 8-round ITC major event. And basically I'm going to talk about the list that my opponent ran, the results that we got during the game, and the various strategies and situations that led to those results being achieved. So this will be similar to the Men's Masquerade series that I did after I won that GT, but much longer and hopefully much more interesting in a lot of detail. So with that being said, let's just jump straight into the video.
Welcome to the Black God.
Alrighty guys, welcome to this third installment on my Arcs of Omen ITC Australian Championships series. So in today's installment, we're going to be talking about my second game against Adam Camilleri and his Dark Angels. If you haven't seen the first installment where I talk about my Black Legion list, I highly recommend you go back and watch that one first, because in that video, I break down my list in great detail. I talk about my strategy, my plans, those sorts of things. In this episode, I'm going to be talking specifically about Adam's list, what he ran, what scores we achieved during the game, and how we went about achieving those scores. So with that being said, let's jump straight into Adam's list. Alright, so it was an Arcs of Omen detachment. He was an Adeptus Astartes Dark Angels player. So he had a Ravenwing Apothecary on a Black Knight bike with an Astartes grenade launcher. He had a Ravenwing Champion who had a Company Champion, Reliquary of the Rependant, Black Knight bike with a Plasma Talon. He had a Ravenwing Talon Master with Arbiter's Gaze, who was the Warlord. He had a second Ravenwing Talon Master. He had Samael. Then he had a unit of 5 Infiltrators, a Deathwing Command Squad that had a Watcher in the Dark, a Deathwing Sergeant with Thunderhammer Storm Shield, and a Deathwing Terminator with Thunderhammer Storm Shield. Then he had a second Deathwing Command Squad with the same loadout, so essentially 2 units of 2 Terminators, and then a third unit of 2 Terminators. So total 3 units of 2 Deathwing Command Terminators. Then he had a big unit of Ravenwing bikes. So he had the Ravenwing Black Knights. There was a unit of 10 and a unit of 9. Then he had a Scout Squad, which had 5 Camo Cloaks, a Scout Sergeant with a Combi Plasma Thunderhammer, a Scout with a Heavy Bolter, and then 3 Scouts with Sniper Rifles. Then he rounded the list out with 3 Storm Speeder Thunderstrikes. Alright, this was a really powerful and really intimidating list to verse. Adam is also a very, very strong player. He's one of the World Championship players. So he's really, really strong in his own right on a really, really terrifying list. So let's have a look at the scoreboard and then talk about some of the things that led to that situation. Alright, so Adam got a 93-point win to my 58-point loss. So for primary, Adam got 40 off the regular primary and then 12 points off of the sub-primary. He took Codex Warfare, for which he got 15 points. He took Retrieve Battlefield Data, for which he got 8. And he took Behind Enemy Lines, for which he got 15 points, giving him a grand total, including Battle Ready, of 93 points. Then I took, primary-wise, I got 12 points. I got 9 from the sub-primary. I took Warp Ritual, for which I got 7 points. The Long War, for which I got 11. Behind Enemy Lines, for which I got 9, giving me a total of 58, including Battle Ready. Alright, so there's a few things that you need to know about Dark Angels that are absolutely terrifying. One of them is that those Black Knights can pre-game move, and they get a 17-inch move, and then in their first turn they can make another 17-inch move. So if you go up against this Dark Angels player and they go first, they can send those bikes into your back lines, which is really terrifying for a Chaos Space Marine player who relies on getting their buffs up on those Terminators to keep them alive. So I was terrified that if Adam went first, he was going to go full send into my backfield, kill all my Terminators, and the game would be over before I even got my first turn. So what I did is I put the Terminators in that ruin as tight as possible, and then I put a couple of units of cultists bridging the gap between two ruins so that Adam couldn't actually move through there and he wouldn't be able to move around and get angles on my Terminators. So I've screened out my Terminators, but in doing so, I've sacrificed both units of cultists turn 1, and I've also made it so that if I was to go first, I'm going to really struggle to do actions and things like that. So we then basically rolled off for it and I got the first turn, which was preferable, but still not ideal because of the way I was forced to deploy in order to protect myself from the potential of him going first. So in my first turn, the cultists basically, they tried to move towards cover as best they could. They weren't able to get all the way there, but I thought even if we can get a few of them out of line of sight, that might help protect the unit. And then the Terminators moved up into the center of the table, did my warp ritual, shot some infiltrators off of an objective, claimed an objective for themselves, getting me those long war points, and I basically just went, cool, I'm here, I've got all of my buffs off, so I got my Illusory Supplication, I got my Delightful Agonies, I got my Mutated Invigoration, so this unit was at max durability, right in the center of the table. Then I basically handed it over to Adam, and he proceeded to practically delete the whole unit in a single shooting phase. I was like, what the fuck? Now, I'm not normally one to blame dice, but this was absolutely, and Adam agrees, a situation where he spiked slightly high and I spiked slightly low. And the difference between those results is what caused this unit of Terminators to basically get evaporated in a single shooting phase. He killed, I think, 6 or 7 out of the unit, and then I failed morale because I didn't have the command points to auto pass. And then after failing morale, I lost more Terminators to combat attrition. So as a result, I was left with 2 Terminators at the end of that first turn. And I was like, this is an unmitigated disaster because now those 2 Terminators are not enough to do any meaningful damage back to Adam. I thought maybe I was going to be left with 4 or 5, not 2. So this was a huge problem. Those 2 then went into backfield and killed some scouts because they weren't going to deal with a unit of Black Knights. So they went in and did that. Meanwhile, I brought on the Heck Brutes and I brought on the Decimators from Strat Reserves because it was now my second turn and tried to swing back. I killed a fair bit. I killed some of the Thunderstrikes. I killed, a couple of the Talon Masters. I killed a bunch of stuff, but it just wasn't enough because Adam still had those big scary units of Black Knights, which were then able to delete Hellbrutes, were able to delete the Decimators, and I effectively was tabled by, I think it was around turn 4. So this was a real big problem, and I don't necessarily know how I could have gone about mitigating it. One of the things that I should have done is just make it so that my Terminators are in the middle of the table and out of line of sight. There was a decent sized ruin there, I absolutely could have done it, but I basically got a little cocky and thought, I've got all my buffs on, he'll never kill me, and turns out he did. So there's 2 ways I could have done it. I could have gone out of line of sight, so that I wouldn't have been able to hide from his whole army, but I would have been able to hide from some. And even if I could reduce his shooting capacity by, say, 30% by making it so that a third of his army couldn't see me, well, that increases the durability and the longevity of my unit by 30%, which then increases the damage output by 30%, which makes it way more of an interesting game. The other thing I could have done is I could have saved that Veilbreaker plate on the first turn, got all my buffs up, moved out, shot the Infiltrators, maybe shot a couple of Black Knights, and hid, and then in the next turn, Veilbreaker plate out, go for that big charge, and try to do as massive amount of damage as possible. Now that I know that the Dark Angels can kill those Terminators, I now recognize the importance of doing the damage with them when you can. He was ignoring cover as well, so there was just getting through those, pushing me to my invulnerable saves, doing multiple points of damage, which meant that my Delightful Agonies wasn't very effective because he was just killing them all. And combined with him spiking slightly high on his accuracy and me spiking slightly low on my saving throws, resulted in the unit being destroyed. So yeah, that was a really interesting game. It was over a lot faster than I would have liked, but I definitely learned something from that game, and that is that you need to be able to assess, are your opponent able to kill the Terminators? And if they are, you need to go either really defensive or really aggressive. You can't afford to try to do both. And that's what I did in this game, is I tried to do both. I tried to put myself in a position where I'd be able to shoot him and see him, but in retrospect, I should have gone into a position where I was going to be able to either shoot him, see him, and then charge him, or I should have gone into a position where he couldn't see me and I couldn't do any of those things. Trying to have your cake and eat it too is what cost me this game. So congratulations to Adam, you've ended my winning streak with the Black Legion, you've done a great job, and yeah, it was a great game, I learnt a lot. Adam's an absolutely legend of a bloke, so yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting. This one's probably a little bit shorter than others because, like I said, the game was over before it really started, so we'll hopefully the next ones will have a little bit more interesting tactics and combos, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for the next installment on this series. With that being said, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to head over to my Patreon where you can get a t-shirt like this, you can get neoprene objective markers, you can get custom dice made. There's a bunch of different services that we offer over there, and we also have a Patreon where I offer one-on-one coaching and training, as well as memes, and there's a good discussion board on news and current events, those sorts of things, and you also get to have input on future videos released on this channel. So we do a lot of really amazing stuff over in that Patreon, and also we are giving away a 3D printed Angron this month. So all you have to do is join the Patreon to automatically be entered into the draw, and basically the idea is you'll get this 3D printed model in your hands before the World Eaters Codex even hits the shelves, which means you're going to have time to build and paint it, get it on the tabletop, get it ready, so that when you do receive that book, you can hit the table running from day one. So with that being said, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Welcome to the Black God.